Welcome to a brand new week of Village Vice, the 100th episode of Village Vice.
Wow.
And to think they thought this wouldn't last. Some people thought it wouldn't go 100 episodes. Some people probably thought it wouldn't go 10.
And some people asked why it even made it to 1.
Well, sure. Yeah, some people disagree with getting to 100 episodes, but here we are. And Zach, here we are, just smack dab in the middle of spring football fever.
What a tease, Brad. We get a week. It's like, yes, it's back. Football's back on the plains. Spring break.
It's like having a bye week, like having an open date in week 2 of the season. That's what it's like.
Be bizarre, man. Be bizarre.
Yeah.
No, it seems like the vibes are high, right? Especially with, Freeze and a lot of players talking to media on Thursday, which was kind of nice to see. But then even all of that, it's like it ramped up and then, this week off. But just the general feeling of everything, for the most part, most things feel so much better now than they did a year ago. And like just the general feeling of the direction of the program is going where you want it to, which is great. But still, I mean, the conversation is going to be all about quarterback.
It is. And, Hugh Freeze had a fairly lengthy press conference last week. He touched on a lot of different issues. Pretty interesting. Like in the immediacy of the press conference, I kind of wish that we could have jumped on it right away and said, let's talk about because he talked about a lot of stuff, including the opportunity, like just flat out addressing the opportunity to take advantage of Alabama being in transition from one coaching staff to the next.
Yeah.
Like
and which is, I guess it's him saying the quiet part out loud, right? Like they seem vulnerable for the first time in 15 years. Okay. Can they take advantage of it?
Yeah.
And then one of the best players in your 2025 class, flips over there. Like that's not the best feeling in the world. So, I'm sure Alabama feels good about that, as they should. But yeah, I love the honesty, which goes back to every time we do talk about a Hugh Freeze presser is, boy, he tells you what he thinks. And a lot of the times is what the fan base feels, which is certainly that way about Alabama feeling like they're the most vulnerable they've been. But I think the news that happened on the recruiting trail over the weekend is a nice reminder of like, sure, they're down, but they're still in a good situation when you look across the state.
Sure. That was one part. But specifically about quarterbacks, specifically about culture, before we get to the quarterbacks, I think more and more it's kind of coming into focus that last year, I guess maybe we all know this, but it doesn't hurt to reiterate it, that in year one with a new coach and a new staff, so much time is spent on other things than developing the culture internally within the program. At least last year for Auburn, so much of Hugh Freeze's time was spent trying to cultivate recruiting relationships.
Sure.
And you cannot cultivate all those things at once. And so perhaps the internal culture of the team didn't get maximized. Perhaps on-field, even game planning didn't get maximized. And so to hear the talk now about how it's more of player-driven leadership, and to hear about, he listed like 12 guys who have taken on an active leadership role with the team from varying position groups. I think that's pretty exciting, regardless of what we see on the field, at least in the first like 7 or 8 practices.
Yeah, and they create his culture council, which is great, especially, I think it's a creative way for this coaching staff to trust the direction of, how these player-led workouts are going. Because a lot of these guys, especially the guys that he's entrusted since he walked in the door, your Jason Joneses of the world. I think Eugene Asante was one of those guys. It's like those guys can probably finish Hugh Freeze's sentences at this point, and I think that's a great way to kind of make those guys feel even more ownership. And true leaders, you don't need that. They don't need to feel ownership. But I think it's a nice way to say, hey, I trust you guys for running the parts of the year where we can't interact with y'all due to NCAA rules. And I think it's a creative way to do that.
Yep, it is. And true leaders may not need to feel the buy-in, but they are, or ownership. I think it's a great word. But I think that true leaders at the top that's their strength.
Sure.
They create the feeling that everybody, like, it's one of Butch Thompson's strengths. It's one of Bruce Pearl's greatest strengths.
Agreed.
Is that those who are involved, from players on down the line, even those in auxiliary roles, feel a real ownership within the program. And so when I listened to the presser and he ran that list, I'm thinking, well, yeah, these are the guys who should. If these guys aren't taking on leadership roles, then that's a problem. You need your returning veteran guys who have played a ton of snaps, guys who have to be the ones who make the tackles, make the plays. Yeah. Those are the ones you want to be taking the active leadership roles. And so if they are, then you're on track. Right. You're right on track. There's nothing that's happened so far in the offseason that makes me feel like this team is not on track to improve from year one to year two.
Yeah, and I don't know, barring injury, I'm just going to add that caveat. Barring injury, I don't know if there's really anything that Auburn could do to make me feel that way, or not do to make me feel like they're behind or they're not way ahead of schedule from where they were a year ago. And that's the perk of bringing a starting quarterback back for another year, which, we'll talk more about quarterbacks in a second. But the offensive line, like, are there real battles on the offensive line right now outside of, if you think Jeremiah Wright's not going to win a guard spot, like, you feel good about the other four. People can't quit talking about Percy Lewis and Xavier Miller, how big they are, and how D Wade feels so confident at guard and Connor Lew's a shoo-in at center. It's like there's not a whole lot of battles happening at a lot of key spots. Linebacker, there are some battles, but we all can kind of guess who the top 2 and 3 guys will be. If you want to, if there's a battle between Eugene Asante and Darian Mausi and Austin Keys as far as like market share of snaps, like maybe, but a lot of these spots, like, we kind of feel pretty good about where they're at, with the exception of wide receiver and then maybe defensive back. But this team's got an identity. A lot of these players on the team and on the roster have an identity, and they know what they're supposed to do. It's just a totally different vibe than a year ago, Brad.
And those two positions, I feel differently about them than I do than I do each other. Wide receiver, I feel like the risk reward of the position battle is really high in the reward category. Those are your playmakers. Those are the proactive, opportunistic players on offense. So whoever wins that competition, you're trying to find people to go make plays. You're looking for the playmakers. Right? And then on the secondary, it's a little different. There's a little more risk reward there. These are the guys who are keeping big plays from being made. And that was something that was talked about as a focus. Too many big plays last year. And so you've got to have guys who are locked in on the back end of the secondary and keeping the big plays. So I look at those position battles a little differently. I'm excited to see. It's like Christmas with the receivers. Who's it going to be? Who's it going to be? And then in the secondary, it's, all right, do we have the guys who are going to keep the big play from happening? Let's hope so.
Yeah. All right. I want to talk quarterbacks.
Yeah.
In a second, specifically something from Thursday that I think is interesting. I want to run that by you. That's coming up right here on Village Vice. Today's show brought to you by our friends at mybookie.ag. Mybookie.ag you can use anywhere. You can use them anywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. Mybookie.ag, they've got you covered. And right now, you can use their promo code, our promo code. Just use promo code next round, and you get free money deposited into your account to wager with over at mybookie.ag. They've got all the lines, props, parlays, whatever you want. They've got you covered at mybookie.ag. Use promo code next round. And when you do, you'll hear a sound effect that goes bloop, bloop. That's the money being added to your account. Bloop. Once again, mybookie.ag. Use promo code next round. Bloop.
You like how I don't even fight it anymore? I like, you know what? Let me get in the boat and go with it. Fine.
Hey, we're a team.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that about us, which gets me fired up. Yeah. That's how we made it 100 episodes, Brad. Because we're such a good team. Like 91% of shows don't make it past 3 episodes. And then it's like of that 9%, it's like 40% of those don't make it to the 20th episode. So, I mean, we are in the top 1% as far as shows that have the total episodes. How about that?
You would know this. And so I ask, is that real? Is that a real stat?
I didn't make that up. That is real.
That's a real stat.
That is real. Yeah. Like 91% of podcasts don't have more than 3 episodes. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
And we've got 100 now.
We got 100. So we've made it 33 times as far as most podcasts.
Yeah. How about that?
That's terrific.
That's just numbers.
Yeah.
We haven't done stat time in a while. There you go.
That's stat time.
There you go.
I love it.
So Auburn made a lot of players available to us on Thursday, which was super cool of them. And thank you so much to the Auburn football program for doing that. One of which was Peyton Thorne. Do you think that's like, if there was a true quarterback battle going on, would they have done that? Just genuine question.
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. But I think they would have had more than one come. And maybe they will before spring is out. But to go to the sort of the genesis of the question, I don't think it's a wide open battle. And I've said that for a couple of weeks now. I think it's Peyton Thorne's job to lose. And a couple of things that were said in the press conference make me think that. Number one is
you literally said it.
Yeah.
It's Peyton's job to lose.
His job to lose. But so beyond just saying that, he also said that he really liked a lot of the things that Peyton had done since January. In other words, the bowl game was nightmarish, and we saw it and we understand that. And it was the cause for people panicking. But since then, the things we haven't seen, things we haven't been privy to, he's done all those things to grab the leadership mantle for that position and for that room. So in addition to, physical tools and understanding of the offense and terminology and things like that, his comfort in it, he's done the leadership things. So now I also love that we got about as much coach speak as you're going to get from this head coach, which we love. And that was, no position is just going to be told the job is yours. If you just tell somebody the job is yours, you naturally, it's human nature, you'll lose a little bit of your incentive to go do things in practice. So
did that camera fall on its own?
Yeah, it did.
How about that?
It was precariously positioned to start with, but it didn't fall all the way.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. No, you're right though. I mean, and I'm trying to think of how many guys are entering this offseason like, okay, you have the job.
Right.
And, you can probably say that about a few offensive linemen.
Yep.
You can say about Rivaldo Fairweather. You can say about Keldrick Falk, Eugene Asante, maybe, unless you want to play up Darian Maiusi, which I'm okay with. I like Darian Maiusi a lot. I think he's going to be a good player. Keontae Scott, probably Kayan Lee. But all those guys still have asterisks as far as how are you going to be used?
Yeah.
Like Rivaldo, it's like you're going to be the starting tight end, but how involved in the passing game are you going to be? Are you going to be a top 3 receiver in this offense? Are you going to be like the 5th receiver, like a normal tight end in this offense? I still think there's a lot of asterisks next to that, which is good, which I think it's a good thing.
And most of those other positions that you mentioned, whether it's linebacker, defensive back, one guy isn't going to hold down the spot for 95% of the snaps in a game. Right? There's going to be some shuffling guys in and out at those positions, some subbing here and there.
Yeah,
out of the quarterback
assuming Durkin handles the rotations differently than the previous administration did. Yes.
Yeah. So you would think at least at some point for a series or a play, you don't have that at the quarterback spot.
You mean you don't want to play 2 linebackers for every defensive snap in a game? You don't want to do that?
No, I don't. I'd like to maybe build and
we did that for 2 years. That's wild.
I know, right? Owen Papo watches and goes, "What are you talking about, man? I don't.
Yeah,
let me play 100."
Chandler Wooten's like, "Wait, I could have come out of the game for a play."
But to your point, though, there are guys who have experience and they've locked down spots. But even those guys are going to get a rest 30%, probably.
Probably. Right.
Ideally. 30%. You're not bringing the quarterback out for 30% of the snaps. It's just not what you ask of the quarterback is different physically and psychologically than those other spots.
Yeah. I just realized I missed my haircut appointment. I'm getting a call from them right now.
No
I'm
kidding.
Devastated. I'm devastated.
Mm.
Oh, well.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
I apologize.
I didn't write it down, Brad. Usually those notifications, like I love this new trend of like, we're just going to over text you the day before, a week out, the day before, the morning of, like, we'll see you this afternoon.
Like it's a CIA briefing that you're going to.
Well, I love it because I need to be reminded over. I've got like too many plates spinning. Normally it's like, how could you miss this? We reminded you 85 times.
Yeah.
Still doesn't work. Still not enough.
Sorry.
It's not on you. It's not on you. I'm the one who told you this time. I'm like, can you move it up? Holden Gurner's name is just not popping up at all. Do you think that's a fan base thing, or do you think that's a real thing?
I mean, Coach Freeze mentioned him pretty early when talking about the quarterbacks in his press conference.
Okay.
But I do think the fan base, quite frankly, I think the majority of the fan base has already put Holden's name in the portal. I'm not saying that's right. I'm saying I think most people look at the
narrative.
Yeah. I think most people look at Hank Brown and they look at Walker White and they assume that those two guys will have bigger roles than Holden Gurner will have. Even though, again, Coach Freeze didn't leave him out talking about quarterbacks the other day. So, I don't know. He was brought in by the previous head coach.
Right.
People liked what they saw. Again, I don't like doing this with bowl games because bowl games are so different. But you got a sample size from Hank in the bowl game, and they like that. And then Walker has given us no sample size yet in an Auburn uniform. And that's the way every heralded freshman quarterback is. They're gold. They're untouchable in the early going. So I think it's just kind of natural that there's been less talk about Holden at this point.
That's right.
100th show.
All right.
Yeah.
We just wanted families involved for the 100th.
We did. It's a family day.
That's all it is. Yeah. All right. Go ahead and do your next ad read right now.
I got a haircut.
All right. So, all right. Little reset. We're reset. Back. We're good. It's fine. Everything's fine. Manscaped. Yes, Manscaped. Top of the morning to you. This episode, the 100th episode of the show, brought to you by the St. Patrick's Day Shamrock Shavers themselves, Manscaped. This year, don't just chase rainbows, Zach. Make your own pot of gold and groom your little leprechaun with the leaders in below-the-kilt care. Say goodbye to your clover forest with Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0. And, man, just let your confidence shine bright. Embrace the luck of the Irish and join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. Head over to manscaped.com. Use the code VICE, V-I-C-E. You'll get 20% off and free shipping. That's the promo code VICE at manscaped.com. I'm so sorry.
All right, let's talk a little hoops for a second. Auburn goes on the road to Missouri. Missouri's really bad.
Yep.
Like borderline historically bad. Hasn't won a conference game yet. It's really easy to look at this and say trap game. I don't think it is, but a lot of the fan base does feel that way. Why do you think that's not the case?
Because it's March. It's the first week in March. If it's the first week in January or the first week in February, maybe. But it's March now. And there's a scenario where this team still shares an SEC championship. It's not totally in their hands. They got to have help to get it, but they're fighting for seeding. They're fighting for NCAA tournament seeding and SEC tournament seeding, and they are still in the hunt for a regular season championship. Sean East is a tremendous scorer for Missouri, but this year that's all they've had from an offensive perspective. So at this point, the calendar tells me that it's not a trap game.
Yeah, and it's not like Auburn has a Kentucky or an Alabama this weekend either. They've got a Georgia team that they should be able to handle at home as well. So it's not like, I don't feel like they're going to get caught looking ahead or anything like that. And you I don't know this. I was about to say you just know, but I'm assuming that that'll be part of the messaging from Bruce Pearl is, look, they're going to beat somebody. They can beat somebody. You better not let it be you. And I mean, it would be bad. It would be really bad to lose this game. You probably fall out of the top 4 and you don't get a double bye if that were to happen. Where obviously if you do win these next 2, you're pretty much all but guaranteed. I think there is a scenario where there is a chance that you could fall out, but I don't think it's very likely.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, it just comes down to pride, right? Like at some point you just got to have pride and you got to, and Auburn's done a good job beating the teams they're supposed to beat. It's the toss-up games where they've kind of, stumbled.
Yeah, the losses Auburn has had so far on the road, even the home loss to Kentucky, they haven't affected the math. A loss at Missouri would affect the math at least a little bit, as much as a single game can at this point in the year. There's still a whole lot of data. The computers still love Auburn because of the totality of the season. Would it be bad? Yeah, but I have a real hard time thinking that this team could fall or falter in this situation. Psychologically, I think you're going to see the same type of team that you saw at Georgia a couple of weeks ago too, because Lior is now out for the season, and the team loves Lior.
Yeah,
and there's a rallying point when you have an injury like this, and I'm not trying to spin it as a positive thing. It sucks for Lior.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Everybody agrees it sucks for Lior.
Yeah.
But what you have is that 40 minutes on the floor, those guys come together and go, you know what? Lior can't be out here with us. And so you saw it in Athens. You saw the bye week and everybody playing a little harder because they knew they had to in the absence of Jalen Williams. And you saw the kind of difference that made. So
yeah, I mean, we talked about this before. This team appears to love each other. I mean, it seems like they get along really, really well. So I don't know this, but I would imagine Lior will still do everything he possibly can to support this team.
Yep.
I hope he's still able to travel if travel situations allow that. And if not, he will be very involved. I'm sure he's there at practice. I'm sure he's there in the locker room as much as he can, which is the kind of guy Lior is. And it's the kind of guy all these guys appear to be, which is great. So, you certainly hate it for Lior for sure.
Let me ask you, at Missouri, 12.5 points, 7.5 assists for Auburn's point guards. Over, under?
Under.
You think so? For both?
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to think over for points. Maybe
I'd be more comfortable taking over for the, you said 7.5 assists?
Yeah.
I feel more comfortable taking the over for the assists than the points.
Okay.
Which I think is a little concerning. I mean,
yeah,
you don't see many teams make runs that don't have, scoring from the one spot. That's pretty tough to do.
If the scoring's down, the assists need to be up though, because it means they're not
scoring,
they got to either be scoring or facilitating. Yeah,
yeah, and sure. I mean, I think the way, Denver's really coming on right now.
Mm-hmm.
Chad Baker-Mazara, Jalen Williams doesn't seem like he was hurt at all a few weeks ago, which is great. What a pleasant surprise, because it looked pretty bad when he went down. So, I'll take over on the assists. I will take under on the points.
Okay. All right. I think Auburn beats Missouri in that scenario fairly comfortably.
I think Auburn beats Missouri regardless of what
happens.
Those aren't a bad team, Brad. They are a bad team.
They are. So, I agree. I'm just not.
We're not a bad team. That's why we made it to 100 episodes.
How many episodes would this Missouri basketball team make it?
They wouldn't make it to 3. They'd be the 91st. I just said 91th. We need to be done.
91st percentile.
I just said that. I'm getting scolded by the person who cuts my hair.
Yeah.
And I'm just rattled right now.
This 100th episode has not been the most polished episode in the history of Village Vice, but
no,
that's okay. You know what? We're just being real with you. We're not the most polished people out there.
And the version of this that people are going to see has been edited.
Yeah, it has been polished a little bit. Speaking of, I got to go yell at my kids now, Zach.
All right, sounds good. Brad, that about does it for today's show.
All right, thanks everybody for watching. Remember, everyone has vices. Make sure Village Vice is one of yours.